Hi everyone, I'm David Block.
And I'm Imu Shalev.
Welcome to the Parsha experiment. Parshat Chayei Sarah. Let's be honest, compared to some of the exciting stories in these last few weeks, the stories in this week's Parsha seem much less exciting. We don't have anything grand like creation or the flood or the binding of Isaac.
Let's take a look at what actually happens in this week's Parsha. Bring up the clock, 20 seconds, let's go. Sarah dies and Abraham buys a burial plot. There's a long and detailed story about the journey of Abraham's servant to find a wife for Abraham's son Isaac. He finds Rebekah, who returns with him to Abraham and joins the family. Abraham marries Keturah and has a few more kids, and then Abraham dies.
Now, the bulk of the Parsha is really the story of Eliezer trying to find a wife for Isaac. And at face value, it's not the most gripping story. Here's what happens. Abraham charges Eliezer to find a wife, but not from where they live, not from Canaan, but back from Abraham's homeland. And instead of just hearing how Eliezer actually finds Rebekah, we hear all about his journey, what he took on his journey, his prayer to God along that journey, a sign that he asked God to make for him so that he knows exactly who the right girl is. And then when he actually meets Rebekah, we expect the story to be over, but then we hear even more details. We hear about the conversation he has with Rebekah, and then about the conversation he has with Rebekah's family. And in that conversation, he retells the entire story, and we hear it again for the second time.
So the question is, why do we need to know all of this? It's a nice matchmaking story, but who cares about these small details? Why do we hear it with full detail for a second time?
And it's really strange because we know that the Torah can be brief when it wants to be. Here's an example. When Rebekah retells the story to her mother, it says, V'taged leveit ima, she tells to her mother's household, Kadvarim ha'ela, these things. We don't hear all the details of her retelling of the story. It just says that she retold it. So it's obvious that the Torah is purposely retelling the story for us again. The Torah wants us to know something.
Right, if you look at Eliezer's retelling of the story, you'll realize that Eliezer's retelling of the story is not identical to the narrator's description of what happened. There are some really important differences. I think it's possible that the Torah is trying to actually make you bored so that you notice those differences, so that you realize that there are these small discrepancies, because hidden in those discrepancies is the real story. And if we figure out what that is, we won't just get a deeper understanding of the story, we might understand why the story is here in the first place.
Let's take a look at some of those discrepancies. Now, we won't be able to get through all of them right now, but let's try to highlight some of the larger ones and see what we can make of them.
The first major discrepancy is in Abraham's instruction to Eliezer not to take a wife from among the Canaanites, but instead to go to his homeland. However, in Eliezer's repetition, he tells him again not to take a wife from the Canaanites, but he adds something curious. Im lo el beis avi telech ve'el mishpachti. Take a wife from my father's house and from my family. Eliezer shifts the focus. Abraham sends him to his homeland, but never specifies where he should go. But in Eliezer's retelling, he tells him specifically, go to my father's house, go to my family. That's the place where you're going to find a wife for my son. But that's not true. The Torah doesn't describe it that way the first time around.
And here's another difference between the two stories. On Eliezer's journey, he prays to God. He wants some kind of guidance to help him find a wife for Isaac. Hakreina lefanai hayom, God, be with me today, v'aseh chesed im adoni Avraham, and do chesed, do kindness for my master Abraham. But when he retells this, his prayer is different. He turns to God and says, Im yeshcha na matzliach darki, asher anochi holech aleh. God, if you will, please make me successful on my journey today. The first prayer was him asking God to do kindness for Abraham. And this one mentions nothing of kindness. It just says, make me successful. What are we to make of that?
So immediately after Eliezer makes his deal with God, he finds a girl who fulfills the conditions. What does he do next?
Well, that depends on which account you're reading. It's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure book. We have two options. In the actual account, after Eliezer gets water for him and his camels, he gives jewelry to Rebekah, and then he asks who she is. But when he retells the story, he flips the order. He first asks who she is, and then he gives her jewelry. And the obvious question is, why in the world is Eliezer switching the order?
The next difference takes place when Eliezer thanks God for helping him find the perfect girl for Isaac. In a prayer to God, he says, Baruch Hashem Elokei Adoni Avraham. Blessed is God, Lord of my master Abraham, Asher lo azav chasdo v'amito me'im Adoni, who has not abandoned his kindness and truth that he grants to my master. But when he retells the story to Rebekah's family, the prayer changes. Va'avarech es Hashem Elokei Adoni Avraham. I blessed God, Lord of my master, Asher hinchani b'derech emet, who has guided me in a path of truth. He leaves out an important word. The word is chesed, kindness. And as we saw above, this is actually the second time he leaves out that word.
What's going on here? Eliezer doesn't just add a few things or take out a few things. He actually changes things. Does he just have a bad memory? We want to suggest that Eliezer saw something that made him want to change the story. He realized something about Rebekah's family. And when we figure out what that thing is, we might find that there's a rhyme and reason to all of the differences.
We think the thing that Eliezer saw happens in a pasuk that most people might not have even noticed. After Eliezer meets Rebekah and Rebekah runs home to tell her family, Lavan comes out to greet him, and he invites him to their home. Vayomer, he says, Bo Baruch Hashem, come, blessed one of God. Lama ta'amod bachutz, why are you standing outside? Vanochi paniti habayit umakom lagmalim. I made room for you in the house, and even room for your camels. And now pay attention. Vayavo ha'ish habayta, the man came with him to the house. Vayiftach hagmalim, he unties the camels. Vayitain teven umispo lagmalim, and he gives the camels straw. Umayim lirchotz raglav, and washes their feet. Veraglei ha'anashim asher ito, and the feet of the men who were with him.
And the question is, who did all these things? Who unmuzzled the camels? Who gave them food? Who gave them water to wash their feet? When you look at it quickly, it seems that it's Lavan. He's the one who just invited Eliezer to come inside. So wouldn't it make sense that he's the one doing these things in order to be a good host?
But if you take a closer look, it's actually not Lavan. The ish that untied the camels and washed the feet, that word ish is used to refer specifically to Eliezer throughout this story. For example, 2 verses before this, when Rebekah is telling Lavan what just happened to her, it says, Kodi beri lai ha'ish. This is what the man, seemingly Eliezer, just told her. And then Lavan runs out to greet Eliezer, and the verse says, Vayavo el ha'ish vihine omed al hagmalim al ha'ayin. He approached the man who was standing by the well. Lavan obviously didn't approach himself. Who was standing by the well? That's Eliezer. Which leads to the very strange conclusion that Lavan put on a show for Eliezer. He told him we've got plenty of room in the house, but once Eliezer gets there, Eliezer has to do all the dirty work. He's the one who has to wash the feet of his own men and wash the feet of his camels. And that's what Eliezer saw. Lavan put on a show for him and pretended that he valued kindness, but the truth is, he only cares about how things look on the outside. He doesn't truly value chesed, kindness, the way Eliezer does. And Eliezer realized that he quickly needed to change his story. He can't just extol the virtues of kindness and talk about what a great fit Rebekah's going to be in Abraham's value-centered family. He needs to speak in their language. And he makes just a few differences in the story to make this marriage more appealing to them.
Exactly. So look at what he does. Let's go back to those discrepancies and see what they might mean. When Eliezer tells Rebekah's family about the prayer he made to help him find Rebekah for Isaac, he doesn't say, God, please do chesed for me. Please do kindness for Abraham. He says, please make me successful. He totally takes out the word chesed because that's not the language that they speak. That's not something they value. And when he tells them about how he thanked God, he does the same thing. He doesn't say that God didn't withhold chasdo v'amito, kindness and truth, like he did in the original version. He just says that God did emet for him. God did truth. He totally omits the word chesed, kindness. And instead of kindness, Eliezer seems to focus on family and wealth, much more so than the original story did. Because that seems to be the currency that they really value. And now take a look before the story begins. Before Abraham commands Eliezer, the pasuk says, "V'Hashem beirach et Avraham bakol." God blessed Abraham with everything. But that's all we hear about. When Eliezer retells the story, he adds rich detail. He doesn't just say that God blessed Abraham with everything. He explains what everything means. He tells them that God gave Abraham sheep and cattle and silver and gold and servants and maids and camels and donkeys. And it's kind of strange. Why is Eliezer telling them all this? And then he continues and says that when Sarah eventually had a child, Isaac, who Rebekah's about to marry, Abraham gave all of his wealth to Isaac. That's what Rebekah's family values. Eliezer realizes that they don't care about kindness, they care that their daughter is marrying someone who's really wealthy. And it's the same thing in terms of family. In the first story, Eliezer gave her jewelry as soon as he saw the act of kindness. That's all he needed to see. And then he asked who she was. But in his retelling of the story, he first asked who she was. And then once he realized that she was family, that's what compelled him to give her all the jewelry. He makes it as clear as possible in his retelling that what he values in Rebekah has nothing to do with chesed, with kindness. It has to do with family, it has to do with wealth.
Before we read about these discrepancies, you read about Rebecca and you think she does kindness. That's a wonderful trait in a wife. But after you read the discrepancies, you realize something a lot deeper about Rebecca. She does kindness in a place where everyone around her does the opposite, in a place of anti-kindness. Rebecca cares deeply even about Eliezer's camels, whereas Lavan, he couldn't care less. Now who does that remind you of? Someone who's able to do kindness when everyone around them values the opposite. Isn't that Abraham? These past couple of weeks we spoke about how Abraham is the plan C. He's the one who's going to create the model nation, a nation built on kindness, an example to the rest of the world. But now, as Abraham's story draws to an end, and Abraham is about to die, his legacy, God's legacy, needs to continue in the next generation. Rebecca is the perfect woman to carry the torch of Abraham's legacy. She has the internal strength to model kindness in a place where there is none. She, like Abraham, comes from this land and is able to journey to a place she does not know in order to build kindness, even if the people around her don't share her values. And this story becomes the perfect blueprint for the nation of Israel, who are meant to value kindness and to model kindness. And together with Isaac, they'll spread kindness to others and continue Abraham's legacy and God's legacy and bring blessing to the rest of the world.
Join us next time on the Parsha Experiment. Hey everyone! Check out last year's video and learn about the surprising connection between Eliezer's selection of a wife for Isaac with Samuel's selection of a king for Israel. We know that sounds pretty crazy, but trust us, it's epic. And as always, share this video with your friends and family.